Welcome to the 45th episode of Amateur Hour. Danny and Darren, and you. And you've subscribed, and you've liked, and you've left comments, and that's why you're here, and we appreciate it. Now, spread the word because we know we're a niche, but not that much. I mean, if you're into elite people, how they reach their goals, how they set out to go against challenges that jump up in front of them, because we all have them, and these guests have them, it's not really that niche at all. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go in life, you can learn. And Danny did it again. Danny, you've really produced a great show because here's a simple way to look at it. Let's get back into the niche, the draft prospects that play college baseball, okay? When you talk about Jacob Cozart, catcher, NC State, when you look ahead right now at Perfect Game's most recent draft 200, he's number one. That's high school. That's college. He is the number one ranked catcher as we project ahead to the draft of 2024. What I like about Jacob, the homeschooled athlete, and we love his parents, Craig, of course, a longtime coach, a great scout with Perfect Game, mom, Michelle, I think you'd tell me the rock of the home. The homeschooled athlete who now is all man off in college, doesn't rest on any of those laurels. As a matter of fact, still gets, quote, as we will hear, goosebumps that he learns that his dad is getting goosebumps watching him play. I think for the number one catcher in the land, going ahead to the draft next year, the game's in good hands.
I was excited to learn about his evolution as a catcher because we hear all this fancy talk right now about the offensive catcher and how it's not that every catcher in the big leagues is just preferring defense or just focusing on defense. I think if you actually look around the league right now, we might have one of the best catching classes, so to speak, that we've ever had. The athletic catcher is alive, and I mean, we saw that in the World Series. You saw that with Jonah Heim and Gabby Moreno, and that's the trend that we're at. But before you get to that part, you have to figure out what fits you, what suits you. Jacob Cozart is big. He's a big kid. He's tall. And so how does he work into his body? And does he put a knee down? Does he keep one up? What is best for him? And you're working with different people and different coaches. And so I like to learn about where he's at as his evolution in the position goes. And he's been doing it forever, right? And how cool is it that he's got two brothers, one older and one younger, who both pitch? And you, of course, have dad, but then mom, you mentioned mom too. So they're constantly playing. They're constantly probably playing catch, probably throwing bullpens. And so this is just his life. He eats, sleeps, and breathes catching and playing baseball. And I think that when he gets to the big league level, he is going to fit right in.
Yeah, he's going to go quickly. I mean, it was interesting. You know, you were there too as an attendee and had a lot of fun, but to be around at the Plaza in New York, as I was able to do and have interviews with Jonah Heim and then Gabby Moreno, two totally different sized catchers, right? And two guys that are elite at their game. But I do think you're right. I think if you look at Heim, who's so proud of where he's come defensively, and you liken him to Cozart, you're not far off in that comp because they're both broad-shouldered, tall athletes who can get very low and, you know, go and show that strike, catching down up, as they all are taught. I don't do it well, but that's what they all are taught. And so it's incredible. Now, you had a conversation with one of my favorite PG alums of all time. I covered him for 2 years at Stanford. As the pack folds, he leaves Stanford. Stanford's going to be just fine, and they'll be fine without him. But I love who he is as a human. I love his family. His mom, Gretchen, is a rock, is a strength, another reference to a strong mom. Braden made a bold choice. He left a school that went to the World Series in succession 2 years in a row. And it's Stanford. It's just special. It's unique. But he went to another special school. And I love the fact that he made that bold choice. Give us a few just nuggets. I haven't heard the conversation. You flew solo on this one. What are some of the, if I'm going to pull a few appetizers out, some of the neat things you learned from Braden, currently from Braden?
You hit the nail on the head with mom. We obviously touched on his family, and he is so much closer to family now, right? They're from Mississippi, Madison, Mississippi. And so he's all the way out in California. It's harder for family to come to your games and see you play, right? Now you're in Texas and you'll be traveling around Mississippi to Mississippi. You are in the SEC. And so family They were very excited about the transfer. I think he's very excited about the coaching staff at Texas A&M, particularly getting to work on the pitching side and how important that is for him to grow into that spot. He still wants to be a two-way. He's working on a changeup. He's refining the changeup a little bit. But I think this move for him, he took a lot from Stanford, and he was very gracious about what Stanford gave him and the experiences. But he was glowing, talking about how excited he is to get a chance to play for Jim Schlossnagle and play at Texas A&M. And I think everything that you just said, that is what Braden is. And we've known him to be this really hardworking kid. That's never wavered. That's never changed. And he is just so excited to get the chance to continue to put the work in.
It's interesting how you can change in your life, and it doesn't start when you're an adult and professional. I worked for, a quick personal aside, Wendy Seelig-Prieb, who is no longer in baseball as a leader, but Wendy's the best boss I ever worked for. And she was incredible until I worked for Derek Hall, who ran the Diamondbacks and believed in me like Wendy. And I learned from both, and I left one by choice, then I left the other not by choice. And I'm certainly glad that I had really influential, strong, totally different people to impact my development, as he is doing. These are two of the best coaches in college baseball. He's only going to be at Texas A&M for 1 year. And he does have the influence of Coach Schloss, but he also has Eski with him too. A big part of him is Eski, and I'm glad to hear that it's a positive, because that's the way to go through life. He's always been that way. By the way, on the pitching side, 32 2/3 college innings, 47 strikeouts, a whole bunch of walks. He's going to have to alleviate that. Yeah. But he throws high 90s. So for all of our listeners out there, this guy could be a two-way player. The skills have been there all the way back to high school. We saw him play travel ball for the teams that he played for. All right, let's do it. You produced a great one. The other part of it that we need to throw out there, we'll take a piece of Perfect Game College Baseball. You can always catch a brand new edition on Perfect Game TV. And we tell you to download the Perfect Game TV app to any of your smart devices. We're 24/7, brand new live events. Heck, Danny recently called a live championship. She was in New York. The championship was in Texas. 9 and 11 U states championships. We're doing live events all the time. We have great college shows as well. And we'll take a piece of Perfect Game College Baseball. Hunter Pence is my co-host, and a little bit of the conversation he had with Tracy Smith, the head coach of Michigan. Some interesting thoughts. He even had some thoughts in the unique situation on how his school has handled the football team. Everyone wants to talk about it. But what's Tracy's perspective on it? Not weighing in with a hot take like the rest of us would do, but he's a coach. He's a colleague of Harbaugh's. You'll enjoy his thoughts. And I could add, and here we go with the pod. I love catchers, and everyone that listens to this podcast or any content that we do around Perfect Game, and Danny's tired of hearing it, our guest won't be tired of hearing it, Jacob Cozart, who's a great catcher at NC State. I was raised by a pitcher. He won 300 games. I pitched poorly into A-ball. That's as deep as I got, but I was raised to respect catchers. So I get to talk to one. Jacob, thanks for spending time with Danny and I. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
When did it become your position that you loved? Because to do it, you've got to love it. There's no really successful catcher out there that just is okay with it. You've got to love it. It's a different mindset. At what point in your life did you realize it was something for you? And then even deeper, that you fell passionately in love with the crazy position?
Yeah, so I've been catching basically since I was 8 years old. Dad figured out I could do it pretty well. I had a good hand-eye. I was blessed that he was able to be a college coach. So at the age of 13, was a little too old to bat boy for his team. So he was like, hey, throw the gear on, go catch my pitchers. So, of course, 90-mile-an-hour college pitchers, as a 13-year-old, thinking it's insane. But that's really actually where I learned how to catch, really where I fell in love with it. I started to, excel in what I was trying to do and what it took to earn my craft as well.
Well, we should let our listeners in on the fact, because we're in this little community. If our baseball is baseball church at Perfect Game, inside the walls of the church, everybody knows Cozy, not you, but your dad, Craig Cozart. You talked about your dad and his long-time successful coaching run at High Point. Obviously, baseball a big part of his life. How much of you is because, maybe like me as a ball player's kid, your passion for this sport is because it was your playpen. It was your area to hang out. It was, I'm guessing, if you acted up, you couldn't go to the ballpark. I'm guessing that was a
Something
punishment.
like that.
How much of your passion for this game comes from your father's journey?
Every bit of it. They blessed me. They homeschooled me up until high school. So when he was at the field, I could go up there and spend time with him when he was at the field instead of being in the classroom. So I got my school done in the morning, and then after that, it was strictly baseball. So I grew to love it. I learned how to work hard and earn everything. So every bit of my will to play the game, so to say, came from my father.
I want to go back to Darren's first question about when you first started catching, because I think that right now, especially at the big league level, we're seeing a new evolution of the position, or maybe we're just actually going back a little bit in time and refreshing a little bit of the catcher who can also hit, and that's you. But as far as the position goes, learning to play it and love it, because you guys take a lot of lumps back there and you are the field general. You're the smartest guys on the field. Don't tell anybody that I said that, but I think we all know that to be true. So how did you learn to fall in love with everything that comes with being a catcher? Because it's not just receiving a pitch and throwing it back.
It's I would say the biggest thing is simply just watching the game. One, you can learn a lot by just simply watching it. Like if you were to watch the World Series, like a guy like me, when I watched the World Series this year, I locked in on those two catchers because they won the Gold Glove, so they're the best at what they do. So, one, you can watch the game, lock in, learn specific cues that they do, and also just learn on how to grow relationships with your pitchers, especially if you can grow a really really strong bond with your pitcher, then there's just that confidence factor that you give them whenever you set up back there. You call a pitch and you're like, come on, let's go, let's get this pitch. For a good example, me and Logan Whitaker, our Friday night for 2 years, I've caught him for 2 years straight. So I have a good repertoire with that guy. So me and him work really well together. So I would say that's kind of the unwritten side of catching, knowing how to grow relationships with each and every person on the team.
Have your brothers, Caleb and Sam, helped you learn how to grow relationships?
Yeah, 100%. Because honestly, they're two completely different people. Sam he's kind of a maniac. Um, he's a guy you can go up there and be like, "What the heck are you doing up there? Why are you throwing the ball not as hard as you can?" So to say, I remember doing that one game freshman year on my senior night. We were playing a team that wasn't that good. And he was starting. And he was just kind of lollygagging through it. And I go out there and I kind of get into his grill a little bit. And he came back and struck the next three out and didn't say a word to me the rest of the day. So there's certain guys you can learn those cues with. Some guys you can kind of get in them a little bit, get in the grill, let them know hey, you're much better than this. And some guys you got to learn when to say that stuff. You can be hey, your stuff's really good today. Just keep making those pitches. That's the part that I learned the most from my brothers.
And real quick, just to follow up, Jacob, do you feel like college has been able to enhance that skill for you? And if so, how do you feel like you came into school, and how do you feel or where do you feel like you are now comparatively?
100%. I've grown way better at this in college because back here at college, you get experience you don't get in high school. I was a guy that wasn't really thinking about the draft out of high school, so I knew that I'd get a good experience out of college, and I got to work with, say, 20 plus pitchers every single year of how to grow a relationship with them. And you just don't get that in high school. You have travel ball where the guys are in and out every week, where you've got a new set of pitchers, it seems like, on those big teams. But in college, you get to work with those guys every single day like you would in professional, and you don't I think you only get that in college.
Man, things happen fast, and not expecting that you were there when he was playing at NC State. But we all watched Patrick Bailey this year, and it's your job now. You rule the roost as he did just 2020. So like I sit here thinking, okay, you're going to play this year. You could be doing the same thing for the fill in the blank for Craig Counsell's Cubs in 2027, right? Um, how much do you allow yourself to watch a Patrick Bailey, to see him succeed, to learn from him, and then to also maybe impose yourself into that situation down the road, to visually see yourself being him?
Yeah, so a little backstory. Me and Patrick Bailey went to the exact same high school, so we have that connection too. Not only do we have the connection through NC State, but we have the same connection through Westland Christian Academy. So Patrick's someone I look up to big time. I admire what he does, how hard he's worked. I've seen the way he caught in high school, college, and now professionally, and kind of, I would say, learned his cues, what he tries to do, and kind of like apply to my own game. Because the little nerd side of me coming out right here, he was the best strike stealer in the big leagues this year, which is kind of like that unwritten little stat that only baseball nerds know. So I really lock in on what he tries to do and try to model it to my own game as well.
It's interesting, and to steal strikes effectively, if you're looking at the physical approach to it, you can better do that, be more athletic by dropping one knee down and catching from down up. Yet you challenge yourself maybe a little bit more on the slider in the dirt, right? The backhanded slider. How have you balanced that? How have you balanced what you've learned, what they're teaching at NC State, what your body's telling you? Heck, Hunter Pence told me earlier today that he wished Buster Posey wouldn't have had all those injuries and hip surgery and all that he went through. So how do you balance taking care of your body, stealing strikes, as we talked about, and also maybe the traditional way to catch? How have you balanced through that act of putting them together?
I think it goes back to knowing each pitcher. Like, there's some pitchers that you can set up on a knee and not have to worry about blocking a pitch that's 2 feet to your right, so to say. So this year, I have been working on doing that knee down approach, and I think I've found a way that feels comfortable for my own self. But in years past, I've been straight traditional, where if the guy gets on, I'm going to that blocking position. And I've had the luxury of, and the God-given gift of, having good hip flexibility. So I can still get in that traditional and get under the pitch. But at the same time, I think if you can learn how to do the knee down right, it'll help you in the long run, help you stealing strikes. But my advice for young catchers is to get really, really, really good at blocking in a traditional stance before you mess with that around with going with that knee down.
Did Brett teach you that? You know, we talked about Brett Austin. You mentioned him before we started, that you worked with him your first 2 years. Is that something he taught you? Was that before you got to school?
So again, going back to my dad, he's the one that taught me how to catch traditionally. I got to school my freshman year. They put me on the knee down tradition, like the knee down setup, and it didn't really work out. So I went back to the traditional for the rest of my freshman year and sophomore year. And then Chris Hart, who's my catching coach now, because Brett Austin moved on, he kind of had me like model my knee down after what Patrick Bailey does. And it's been working out really well. So I would say like all three of those guys have had like a huge impact on what I do catching wise.
How in depth are your conversations with Patrick when it comes to baseball, big leagues, catching? Like, give us a little insight into the conversations you have with him.
I would say like because he came back to school a couple weeks ago, like my biggest like question to him was like, how do you like keep a positive, like a good mindset? Like I didn't even really get into like the catching side of stuff. It was more like mindset wise, like what are you thinking? How do you get into that stuff? How do you work with pitchers? Because I'm sure the big leagues is even harder than working with college pitchers. So like that was more of the stuff I asked him.
Did he give you any answers that were surprising, or do you feel like you had a grasp of what he was talking about?
His answers, like, just like when things are going bad, don't like get down on it. Like just keep focusing on your stuff. And then, like, if you're not hitting good, just throw that behind you and keep catching it as good as you can, because catching is a position that you can't focus on hitting. If you get really, really, really good at catching, then you'll find your way through. So that's like mainly his message to me.
I'm a big props guy. Danny knows that, and obviously, like I remember this kid when he was playing at Perfect Game events, young Jape Cozart back in 2016, and then there's this guy certainly who is dad. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to listen to. He has no idea that I'm going to share this with you, and you guys have a great relationship, so it's not a big surprise. But my question to him was simple, and then I'll play it for you, and I'd love your response on the backside. So you're now the parent of a young man who has become a top draft pick, possibility, a guy who's played his way into the conversation. And so now, as a dad who's coached for so long, who had similar dreams, who as a parent watches his son go through that, how have you handled it? How have you and your wife handled it? And Jacob, here's what he said.
You don't want to use cliche terms like surreal, but I remember sitting there when I scouted the USA trials this summer. And you know what? In game 4, he did some things, lead off home run, or home run his first at bat, and then left on left he took a 1-2 fastball that was 96 miles an hour out over the plate and hit it back up the middle at like 108. When I thought, I'm sitting there in the back of my mind saying sit soft, because the lefty on the mound had a mid-80 slider, and it was kind of one of those moments where I had to take a step back as a father and as a scout and say, you know what, this kid may have a legitimate shot of being a first round pick. And it was chilling. It kind of sent tingles through your body because I was sitting there with 100+ scouts in every front office in attendance in the stands. And you could hear the murmurs in the crowd. So, that for me and Michelle has been a lot of fun, obviously tremendously proud, but you touched on the focus part of it. And what I keep preaching to Jacob is stay between the lines, right? Focus on the process, focus on what happens between the lines, and focus on what you can do to help your team win, right? It's no coincidence the LSU Tigers won the national championship last year and had as many draft picks as they did because they played so deep, right? So, you can't control what happens outside the fences, outside the lines. So stay focused on that process and stay between the lines.
No, that's something he's preached, like ingrained into my DNA as a player. Like focusing on what you can control and being the best teammate you can be, helping your team win, doing everything you can, doing the little things to help those guys. But like hearing him talk about that stuff brings me chills as well because like that guy, I remember being a little guy back at Orlando or Oviedo, Florida, hitting these little tennis balls with a tennis racket, trying to learn how to hit. And he's been with me ever since then. So like hearing him talk to me about me like that, just that warms my heart and makes me the happiest son in the world.
Wow, that's very cool. That's what I was going to ask you. Like, I don't know that again, you guys great communication as a family. Kudos to your mom and dad, but all you guys for staying close to one another. But that has to be interesting to hear your dad say that he got emotional watching you play, and then open up his mind and say, "I was worried about this breaking ball, but then he made me look bad by his skill set." Like he was able to. So that had to be cool to hear that your mom and dad, with all the work that they put in, you're giving them chills, man. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, incredible. Speak to mom real quick, if you don't mind. Speak to mom. I know I stole Danny's question, but she can take it deeper. She's got a great relationship with Michelle. But just take it wherever you want. Maybe the last great thing you learned from mom. You're a grown man now, a grown man relationship with his mom. Speak to your mom, Michelle.
No, I would just say thank you to her for all she's done for me, taking me to travel ball games, taking me up to the field at 8:30 after I had an over 8 day at the plate. Like if I had a bad game, Dad would text me, I'm at the field, come on up. Mom would not hesitate to hop in the car and take me up there and still have a warm meal at home waiting for me. So everything she did for me, like I know my words isn't enough to say thank you for what she's done for me, but I just can't thank her enough. And also to try to keep Sam under control for his next couple of years and also Dizzy. So yeah, I would just say thank you for everything. And I know it's not enough, but I just want to say thank you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan. I feel like she takes care of me. She's got, 3 boys plus Cozy, and we were just in Jupiter. I just saw her in Jupiter, and she's making sure I'm okay, and checking in with me. She's just a phenomenal human being, and I think that's what's so special about travel ball and this sport is the relationships. It kind of goes full circle, right? You're talking about how important they are to your position, but how important they are in our sport as well. And she's such a bright light. So I know she's soaking in the last travel stuff with Sam as well. I mean, have you guys ever had a conversation about what it could be like to play together at the big league level? That's probably my last question for you.
Yeah. Mom's literally told me if all I need for you is just to buy me a RV so I can follow you around. And if you give me an RV to follow you around, that's all I need, and I'd be the happiest. I'd be there. I'd cook for you. I just need an RV.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Listen, Jacob, I'm really grateful we got a chance to catch up. I know it's a big season ahead. It's really exciting. Obviously, the team is exciting as well. So, a lot to look forward to next year, but I really appreciate you giving us some time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is awesome. I love catching up with y'all guys.
We are with Braden Montgomery. I'm so excited to be here with you, our Amateur Hour podcast. And this is pre-season, going into junior year. And you have gone from Mississippi to California and now to Texas. You are back in the South. And I want to talk about the South. I want to talk about Texas A&M. And I'm so excited for this next step in your journey. But I want to reflect for a moment because I love Dave Esker. I loved that you chose to go to Stanford to start. I know that you have a working mind and a thinking mind, and I know that was such a great fit for you. And sometimes our fits change and shift, and we are allowed to make different changes. And so I'm excited for your future. But if we could reflect for a moment, going to back-to-back College World Series, having the chance to be at Stanford, to be in that program. What do you take away from your 2 seasons there?
It was awesome. I mean, it molded me into the baseball player and young man that I am. I feel like I gained a lot from being there. I mean, mentally, being the biggest, I matured a lot going there and found a lot of best friends, and that was probably the best part for me, just having those relationships that supersede baseball. So it was awesome getting the chance to go there.
I love all that. I think those things are really important when you're kind of building towards something. And for as long as we've known you, which is a long time now, you've always been forward thinking and just trying to put the pieces together, I feel like, and also taking your time. I feel like you've never felt like you had to rush into what is coming for you because there's always been a plan. You are a man with a plan, I have felt like. And so, you've taken these pieces now from Stanford in your 2 seasons there. You have incredible postseason experience. You played against Texas A&M in the regional last year, which I think is so ironic. And I'm sure you'll be asked about it a lot. But now we go into junior year and you're still a 2-way player. And I think that that's really exciting. I think more than ever, we've seen the rise of the 2-way guy and the success that can be found. So what are the pieces coming into this season that you are saying, these are the things that I've been working on, and these are the things you're going to see that have changed about me?
Right. I mean, obviously I've worked really hard on the pitching this fall. I mean, getting in with Max Wiener and just being able to be around him has been awesome. He's been such a pleasure to have and such a great leader to these young guys. It's been awesome, and everyone's going to see that with our whole pitching staff this spring. I mean, all of our guys are just we're going to be dogs, and we're going to dominate the zone like he preaches, and it's going to be a sight to watch for everybody for sure.
You talked a lot about how you've grown and we've gone over, where you started and maybe feeling like people saw you as undersized and not necessarily saying, you know what, I am, you're right. No, you're like, actually, I might be, but we're going to take this into our own hands and change some things. So if you have the numbers, if you don't, irrelevant. But I would ask, maybe over the past 3 seasons, the past 2 seasons, now going into your third, how has your body changed specifically? Weight, muscle, how you're able to move it mechanically, how you can move it flexibility wise. How have those things changed?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I kind of have just like been gaining weight at like a steady pace. So I mean, I think I came in college and I was probably 195 maybe, and now I weighed myself yesterday. I was 222. So I've put on a lot of weight.
The
And
good
then I've
kind.
always been, yeah. And then I've always been pretty mobile. And so I feel like my flexibility, my mobility has been great. And I've been making gains in that way, but I feel like I've also been working on gaining some stability, because sometimes that mobility can be not the best. And so that's something I've been focusing on recently. But yeah, it just feels like every day my body's been moving better and better. I mean, it's being able to work with such great strength guys that I've had the pleasure of working with. It's been awesome just to get in there every day and get the work in, honestly.
Was there anyone at Stanford that you felt like you connected with really well on the pitching side, as far as your teammates go, that you feel like maybe clued you into some habits that you hadn't thought of, or some routines that you are now going to implement this year?
Yeah, definitely Quinn Matthews. He's an interesting character, but he was an awesome leader, and he was a great guy to have around, for my 2 years. He, like I said, was interesting, but he knew something, and he was a really good pitcher. He is a really good pitcher. So he was fun to learn from. Maybe not talk to as much, but watch.
Observe.
Yeah. He might not be the one that's willing to talk more about what he's doing, but it's definitely fun to watch him and see what he's doing, because when he's getting his work in, he's as locked in as anybody, and he takes it really seriously. So it was really cool to be around.
You're a Southern guy, and so you are kind of going back to the roots a little bit. But California guys, as you know, because you played in the circuit, you played travel ball, you know the California guys are all on a different wavelength than we are. And that's great.
Yeah,
It is no knock, but they just are. And so
yeah,
now you had 2 years to soak that in. So now you're in Texas. So give me first impressions of being on campus, being with teammates, playing around guys who are a heavy dose of Texas.
yeah. It's been crazy, and it's been really different. And uh, the most notable thing is just the 12th man. I mean, it's the fans are way different, and
The football.
into it, and it's just everything is crazy. Like, I wasn't expecting to have 4,000 people for our fall scrimmage at home. Crazy. Yeah, it's a whole different world, and the talent on our team is unbelievable. Yeah, it was just kind of overwhelming, I guess, at first would be my first take of it, but I mean, every step of the way has been awesome. It's a great staff, like you were saying earlier, and the group of guys is awesome. Yeah, everything just kind of exceeded my expectations, so it was awesome.
Take us on the mound with you to start, and then we'll go in the box. But on the mound to start, you've talked about how maybe you're more of a natural hitter, that is something that you have been doing a lot longer. There were more breaks in the pitching, and you came back to it in early high school. So on the mound, what will we expect to see from you this year that's different from last year?
Filling up the zone with more pitches, dominating the zone with more pitches. I've been really working on advancing that feel for my changeup, because I mean, I've always loved it. I just haven't thrown it as much, and so that's been a big thing for me. And yeah, like I said earlier, Max he's big on dominating the zone, and so that's what we're gonna do this year.
Is it a pitch grip? Is it an arm slot? Is it how you're using your body? Is it spin? What will we see? Like, I'd like to hear a little bit about the evolution of the changeup, if you could give us the insight on that and be detailed with that answer.
Right. Yeah. Well, in our training, we use TrackMan very much so to kind of shape the training, but also not like live and die by it. And so it can help to kind of manipulate the tilt on that changeup. So turning your hand a little bit more to the side to kind of kill some of the vertical and make it more down, more depth. So that's something I've tried to manipulate a little bit. And then really it's just been finding the repetition and doing it and getting used to it and just seeing the shape of the pitch in my mind and visualizing it before I throw it and then executing.
Do you watch certain players who you feel like they have a good changeup, whether it's in college or at the big league level, and try to take a piece or two from them?
Kind of, but over my pitching career, it's changeup has been always more of like a feel pitch for me. And so I can gain from watching and listening to others, but I really learn the most and get the most out of it when I'm actually just kind of working through it and trying to feel it out or kind of trying to feel how my fingers are on the ball or whatnot. Yeah.
Are you excited to have developed into a two-way player? Because I think it's always kind of been there, right? And I think in the beginning, every guy wants to be a two-way guy. Who doesn't want to be a two-way guy, right? Like, it's the best of both worlds. It just doesn't always pan out that way because, I mean, you've talked about it, the amount of work that goes in on both sides. By the way, you're also a student athlete. By the way, now you're in a whole new environment. So there's a lot going on and you are trying to manage it all. So how do you maintain being excited, but also knowing the work that goes in to actually be successful at both?
Yeah. It's tough, but I mean, I don't know.
What's the key? What's the key for you? Is it a person? Is it your calendar? What's the key for you?
I guess it's just like that deep love and desire for doing it. I don't know. It's just something in me just feels fulfilled by doing it and by working on it and by constantly doing it and improving at it. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy putting the work in, and it's enjoyable to watch myself progress. And yeah, I think that's worth it.
I'd have to imagine too, some of that comes from your family, right? You come from a big family, an athletic family, mom, your stepdad, your dad as well. You have 3 siblings, a big family. What is the dynamic when it comes to learning from them or trying to maybe understand why they were successful at the college level or how they were able to grow in their respective sports? Like, what's the connection there with your entire family and then you?
Right. I guess what I mostly go for them about is I guess just mental stuff, how to deal with certain failures or how to improve in certain aspects mentally. Just because I know they have that wisdom and experience. But yeah, but then sometimes I just need to talk to them and just kind of have them be there for that. Yeah, it's good to have them there.
Yeah. How about mom Gretchen, right?
Yeah.
And what kind of stability has she provided for you?
Yeah. I mean, she's been an anchor for my whole life for everything. I mean, from elementary school projects to everything. She's been awesome. I mean, she's so smart and so supportive. And she's just been there for everything I've needed every step of the way. And so yeah, it's hard to find what she hasn't done for me. So it's been awesome, and she's been there, and she refuses to not be there. She will be at all the games that she can be at, and will be there for whatever I need. And so it's awesome.
Oh my goodness, you're gonna make me tear up here. That's an exceptional answer. Well, you're a little closer to home now. So
Yeah.
I'm is the family still Madison?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm guessing they were excited about the decision to transfer.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, they get to be here a lot, which is awesome.
Yeah. Have some extra support, right? Have the family in
Yeah.
the stands for more games.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I want to ask you, I think I just have two more. I wanted to ask about your arm strength. I wrote that down in my notes. How are there drills that you have been doing that you've stuck to? I know, when we talked to you in high school, you had a trainer. Is it G-Force?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like you've just like always gone all in. And I know that I'm sure your family has also been a huge part of that and supporting that and you being able to do those things. And that's evolved as well. But the arm strength plays roles in so many different ways, especially when it comes to being and growing stronger and being a better pitcher, right? So what's been the keys for you to make sure that your arm is where it needs to be so that you're not just out there as a pitcher on a college team, you're a competitive pitcher. You are putting yourself in a position to be drafted at some point. What are the keys for that?
Right. I'd say throwing a lot. I mean, being able to
What's a
condition
lot?
every day.
Okay.
Not being disciplined enough to not take days off, and especially not multiple days at a time.
Right.
And then also long tossing. I mean, I get in my high volume, high intensity throw days, and I'll long toss twice a week. And build that arm strength by pulling down. So that was always a big part for me in my high school career, and has just become a bigger part of me when coming down here this fall. And so I'll do a lot of long toss, and then those days will somewhat be replaced when I start getting off the mound again and do the bullpen days. But yeah, long toss has always been a big part of building up that arm strength and just building my arm back up in general.
Okay, last one, and we talked about this a little bit before we started, but the regional against Texas A&M. I'm going through, I'm looking back through the box score. I'm looking at not only what you did at the plate, then I'm looking on the mound too. I think it was the decisive game. Let me make sure I have the right one pulled up here. Yes, you're nodding. I can see you nodding your head here. Hold on. Let me find this box score here. Where is that? There you are. Okay. So in this game, was this the decisive game? You shook your head, yes. So you pitched 2 1/3 innings.
Yeah.
Okay. You came in relief, struck out 3, gave up a hit, gave up a run, yada yada. But you impacted the plate, impacted on the mound, and now you're going to school here. What have you had to take anything? Have you thrown it back? Like, give me something good here. Give me something good.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it's just the spade in my back pocket that I can always pull out whenever. I mean, yeah, it's definitely won me a few conversations. And it's been awesome. I mean, yeah, I get to hold it over everyone's head. I just kind of get to sit on this pedestal where
Well, I'm sure they're glad that you're on their side now, right?
oh yeah, 100%.
Have you bought cowboy boots, cowboy hat? Like, have we leaned in?
No chance. No chance.
Mm.
I told him that's one thing I cannot do.
We're gonna talk in 6 months. We're gonna talk in 6 months and see if that's changed. Okay.
We'll see. I mean, I might have to put on some Timbs. That might be the only boots I put on. I don't know.
I'll need a picture for sure. I'm so excited for you. I love the path that you've taken. I'm always grateful for your time. So thank you for giving me a few minutes.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So it's EP 45, but that's EP 3 of this school year, Danny. And it's been Jack Caglione, Nick Kurtz, Travis Bazzana, Brody Brecht, Braden Montgomery, and then Jacob Cozart. I think what's fun about it, and I'm not about patting all of us in the back, it's the work you've done and the communications that you've put out there. These could be the first 6 picks in the draft. You pick the order. You pick the order, it doesn't matter. They're all going to be in the top 25, let's say, in the first round, but they could be the first 6. And what I've loved that they've all had in common is the maturation through college. They've taken the college experience and grown through it. Even a player who transferred through the portal, which I think sometimes gets, passed on in not a positive light. Here's an athlete who did. So there are different types of athletes. And there are, man, he was great from the get-go. I mean, that's Montgomery. I mean, he was a PG All-American. Geeky baseball fans like you and I knew who he was at 14, 15 years old. But then there were others who people knew nothing about. No one knew who Travis Bazzano was. He's from another country. You talk about what Brecht has become. Caglione and Kurtz through their college experience and how they've grown, these athletes. So some have used college hardcore to develop. Others have developed in different ways. These 6 that you have put together in these first 3 shows are incredible. And I love what they all share in common. Using the college world and the platform and how the game has evolved, the finances now within this game to their betterment, but doing it with a good attitude. It's not a me. They're sometimes uncomfortable talking about self, but I love these 6 guests that you've had to start the school year.
I also think they share a common thread of self-awareness and the desire and the passion to learn their weaknesses and then get better. And that is a trait that is hard to come by. We see it more in sports, obviously. But imagine wanting to be told all the time what you could be better at or what you're not good enough at. And if you want your dreams to come true, you've got to get better at them. And these guys hear it all the time. And for Braden specifically on this episode, you mentioned maybe the walks, and he's well aware of that. And one of the answers to the questions that you heard was talking about pounding the zone and making sure that he's filling the zone up. And so he's hyper aware of that about himself. Jack Caglione is the same way, of being able to erase what happened at the plate and go out and pitch and be able to focus on that and maybe not get too caught up in one or the other. And Jacob Cozart trying to be the best pitch framer that he can be and learning to have offensive power along with his great glove, and knowing his role and his communication and how he communicates with people. Like you have to learn the worst parts of yourself to be the best. And I think that's what all of these guys have. And they've all gone to college and been surrounded by fixtures in the sport who are willing to teach them, and they've soaked it up. You don't hear them complain about being told those things or whining that they have maybe some of these holes in their game. They seem excited that they get to fill them up and the chance to be better. That's what I think I love the most about the conversations, is just being honest about, hey, I wasn't good at this, or this could have been better. Here's how I've worked on it. That's pretty incredible if you think about these are 20, 21-year-old, 22-year-old kids. And so I just appreciate that. And that's what's coming at the big league level. That's why you have rookies who are making such a big impact at such a quick rate, more than ever I think I've ever seen this year. You saw rookies impact, and that's not a mistake. That's not because the team was desperate. That's because they're that good.
No, it's true. And they're going to get there quickly. Nolan Shanaway. I love what you said, by the way. It reminds me, and I've referenced this probably on every single show we have and every single platform. On the day that I was interviewing Corbin Carroll and Mookie Betts on the same day for us, and for Perfect Game. And Torey Lovullo popped his head in on his way to work because we were at a smaller room that we built out with lights as a studio right across basically from the clubhouse entrance. We were lucky to be there. And Torey popped his head in and introduced himself. I'd never met him before May. And he said very simply, "Hey, what are you guys doing in here?" Kind of ribbing at us. Lights were being set up. Well, I got a couple of interviews. Who are you interviewing? Mookie Betts and Corbin Carroll. And he's been with both, obviously, his time with Boston. And he said, wow, two good guys to get. And I told him it was for Perfect Game. I told him it was more for amateur eyes, per se. And we're going to talk about their amateur journeys. And he said, you know what I love about both those players? He said, they both spend each day recognizing and identifying their weaknesses and then attacking them.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you just said. That's exactly what you
quote.
just said.
Yeah.
They recognize it, then they attack it. And it's interesting. We just talked to the legendary head coach Jeff Johnson, who is the coach of Chipola, one of the great JUCO coaches in the country, 1,000 career wins. And Hunter Pence asked him, like, what's the characteristic of a winner? You've had these big leaguers that have come through your time. And he said, confidence. You have to be confident, but it's not a false confidence. It's not, it's not a bravado that you put up. It's a true confidence. And it takes the deepest kind of confidence to be, as you said, aware of your shortcomings and then go about attacking it. And that's what I think is cool. I do want to wrap and just celebrate one thing. A couple of players that didn't go to college. Anthony Volpe didn't go to Vanderbilt when he was in the class of 2019. Instead, he was ranked 25th by perfect game and ended up going in the first round to the Yankees. Corbin Carroll didn't go to UCLA. College wasn't the right fit for those guys. But I think it was really a time to celebrate. You and I were with Anthony at the Gold Glove Awards in New York. We spent time on and off. You saw Corbin on the field during the postseason. I spent time with him during the season, having an in-depth conversation with him. But I think it's a celebration of young baseball when those two guys who were mind and body first, meaning mind and studying of the game and character and how they treat people first, along with working on their skills, are being heavily recognized as we record this podcast.
It's awesome. It's so cool to see and to know that when you see how hard it is to even make the big leagues and then to see these two in their rookie seasons achieve something like that. It's hard to explain, to be honest, because like you just watch them at these events that sometimes they're closed events, sometimes they're open events, and you watch them prepare, you watch them have fun, and you don't really know what the future holds. And here we are just a few years after getting to see them through perfect game, and they're shining on the biggest stage. So it's very cool. Their families are incredible people. They've raised great young men. And that's probably what I would think they're most proud about, is the kind of person they are and how people talk about that. And then it's the skills and the talents.
Anthony Volpe walks through the back room of the Gold Glove Awards on a Friday night at the Plaza Hotel. I was getting ready to interview the final guest that I was going to have for the evening. It may have been Ke'Bryan Hayes, I'm not sure. But they make their way out the back, family, smaller entourage, mom, dad, maybe representative, maybe family friend, I'm not sure. But I do know mom and dad were there, and they were getting ready to take just a quick camera photo with someone's phone. And it was Anthony, and no disrespect, mom and dad, but it was Anthony who stopped the entire group and said, hey, shh. They're doing an interview over there. Let's be aware of what they're doing. It was the 21, 22-year-old who was aware enough, talk about self-awareness, to look over here and say, this is going to be a fun photo, but Darren and Ke'Bryan are doing an interview. Let's be quiet. I'll just leave you with that. That's the kind of people that they are. That's the awareness. Hey, by the way, subscribe. Make sure you comment, share. Make sure you pass it along. And coming up on the next episode, if Danny keeps up on this pace, we're going to be joined by Jackie Robinson, Babe Ruth, and Abner Doubleday. It's a wonderful podcast. It's Amateur Hour, the best guest on the planet. Danny delivers the best guest. Again, it's Doubleday, Ruth, and Robinson as we drop the next podcast. Thanks for listening.